of this past year, I quit my job and decided that I was going to take an adult gap year. People are like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "I'm only doing things that make me happy." It's basically what I'm going to be doing, and I will be traveling. I will be learning new things, but also just in daily decisions, right? If I don't like something, I'm not going to do it.
All right, cool. Just wanted to check. But thank you for coming back. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad we get to catch up.
Oh, I'm excited. I listened to our previous episode a couple days ago before this just to kind of remind myself where we were at.
Oh, cool.
And one of the things that, like, the first thing we talked about was, bucket list stuff, of course, but how neither of us had remembered um, having a bucket list before the movie came out. And I discovered over the past year
Oh,
why that is. And
why is that?
because the bucket list is actually a Mandela effect. So I don't know if you know it. I don't
What?
know. Do you, I don't know if your listeners know what that is or not, but
I do, yes. I'm
yeah, it's
familiar.
a individual or collective misunderstanding or
Hmm.
false understanding of history.
Yeah.
There's just, I don't know how this happened, but there's a group of people out there that think Mandela died in prison
Yeah.
in the 90s, and he actually lived and into the 2000s and got out of prison and became president of South Africa. So it boggles my mind that there's a group of people out there that think that it's anything
Not true.
different. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a little nutty. But I found out over the course of this past year that the bucket list is that same thing. That there is no mention of the term bucket list in the English lexicon before 2007 when that movie came out.
So, I mean, is that really a Mandela effect though, or did that movie just invent it then?
Well, the phrase "kick the bucket" was definitely around.
Yeah, that was.
But there are several things that I think became a part of my bucket list that I know I would like things. Oh, I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Hmm.
And hopefully at some point, especially before I die. But I don't think it was necessarily the context of I have a list of those things.
Yeah. What year did that movie come out?
2007.
2007. I'm so bad at math, so I can't think of how old I was. Because I remember being very young and maybe not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily making like a physical list, but I remember being very young saying, oh, I need to do this and I want to
Sure.
do this or whatever. So, I mean, maybe we just didn't call it that then.
Yeah, I think, but we didn't call it anything.
Yeah.
That
It
I
was
think
just
that's
like
part of it, right?
things we want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things that we'd like to do eventually at some point, and hopefully before we die. But we never called it a bucket list.
Yeah.
And that in my journey over the past year since we talked, that's been a real interesting thing that younger people, millennials, Gen Z, they have it as more of a lifestyle than older
Yeah, I could see that.
generations. That when I talk to people or I interview people that are Gen Xers or boomers, I ask what's next on your bucket list, and like, I don't really have one. But most of the Gen Z millennials that I speak with and talk to, and that I interact with, like on Instagram and other places, they're the people I'm
Hmm.
interacting with. They're the ones that see it as a potential lifestyle because
Yeah.
my generation and above, you didn't start thinking about that stuff until you're much older because you
Hmm.
worked. You work, you
Oh, yeah,
work, you
exactly.
work, and until you can't work anymore, don't want to work anymore, or can afford not to work anymore, and then you start thinking about those things. Whereas Gen Z and millennials are like, I don't have to wait. I can
Hmm.
go do this now, and they're the ones that are actually making a lifestyle out of the bucket list than just this esoteric thing. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that it's a story device, it's a plot device in a movie. That's what it is. It's a plot
Hmm.
device in the movie, and so we associate, I think, a lot of things with it, rightly or wrongly. The two main characters are old and they're dying, and they're,
Yeah.
so I think it has some stigmas around it that
But then, like you said too, how when that movie came out, that's like around the time this generation's being born. So at that time, yeah, that was still the mindset of you're going to work to your quote unquote retirement, whenever that
Hmm.
may be for some people. And that's when you can have your freedom.
Right.
That's when you can try to do these things that you want to do. And that's just not the belief system anymore.
Not,
As
not
it and it shouldn't be.
right. No, exactly. Especially not for Gen Zs and millennials for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So it was November of 2021 that we last did your episode. So actually, wow, this year's going by really fast. So it's not quite a year, but
Right.
almost there. And I still feel like a lot has happened for you in this amount of time.
Yeah, a ton. Definitely a
Yeah.
ton. Yeah.
What do you think you would say is the biggest change or maybe biggest thing that's happened?
I think the biggest thing that's happened over this past year is really looking at this bucket list lifestyle. I think it's one of the things I said in the interview was like, you know, I want to figure out a way to help people. I want to help people have this lifestyle. And
Yes.
so I, you know, it's hard not to do 30 plus interviews on podcasts about this and not, you know, work through that
Yeah.
over a period of time. I think I've done, yours was probably one of the first that I did specifically that
It
talked
was
about bucket
very
list
early
stuff.
on. Yeah.
But since I have done almost 30 or somewhere, I can't even count anymore, but uh it's definitely talking it through so much.
Hmm.
I have come up with kind of like a system at some level, you know, to say this is, you know, if you're going to engage in this lifestyle, this is maybe some of the things that you want to think about while you're doing it. So
Yeah.
I'm in the throes of trying to complete my first book that is entitled Live Out Your List, a bucket list lifestyle guide. And I
Ooh.
am hopefully going to get it done in the next 2 weeks and get it out there for folks. So it's been a trial and error personally to
Hmm.
kind of figure that out. It's been a lot of listening, um, definitely to the guests on my show
Yeah.
and finding some commonalities between what people look at a bucket list and how they've gone about processing and making and executing their bucket list. So that's I think it was unintentional. It wasn't like, you know, even though I said that in that interview, it's like I wasn't taking notes the whole time and saying,
Yeah.
oh, that it just came to a point this, you know, middle of the summer. It's like, okay, I was working on another book that I'm trying to write. And I was like, I just got to get this one out. There's just enough here that I just need to get this done. And so I
Yeah.
stopped the other one and started trying to get this one done. And I don't know, I think I'm like 35,000 words in. I've got about another 5,000, I think, left in me, and I'll be able to put it out there. So,
That's so cool. And I love that title too. And yeah, it makes sense that you'd want to finish this one first when this is like the information so present in your
mhm.
mind right now. And I I like that you brought that up specifically because I was going to bring that up too, that you specifically mentioned you wanted to help people with their lists the last time we talked. And so, I mean, the book, that's really exciting and something new that I didn't know you were working on. But then you're also doing your coaching too.
Yeah, and it's all
Yeah.
based on the same, you know, same principles, right? And I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
hopefully here have some online courses that are similar
Mm.
to what's in the book, you know. And so for me, there's three things that you kind of have to look at when you're looking at, you know, creating this bucket list lifestyle. And the first one is, you know, the mindset. Like, what is your
Mm-hmm.
bucket list mindset? And a lot of that has to do with setting intention.
Yeah.
What are you setting your intention for your list? What's the purpose? Why are you doing this? We talked about that a little bit when you and I, you know, first interviewed each other. And
Yep.
what's the intention of your travel, and what's, you know, setting an intention to make sure you're focused and all those kind of things. There are lots of benefits to that. Figuring out what your intention is, and the biggest benefit of setting your intention is it can help guide you as you create your list.
Yeah. I remember actually, I don't know if I did tell you, I might not have, but after we spoke, I actually, because I've always like doodled down bucket lists in places, but it's always like I'll have half of it in a notebook over here. I'll have some things in a notebook here, and I had like some things in a list on my phone. And so I finally sat down and looked at all of them to see, well, what's consistent, first of all? Like, what have I consistently had on my mind that I know I want to do? What things have I kind of maybe grown out of?
Mm.
But then that thing about intention came to mind, and I looked at some of these things and I was like, do I really want to do or see these things? Or is it just because I think I should? Is
Mm.
it just because of these things? It's like, oh, well, you have to see the Eiffel Tower before you die, or you have to, do whatever X, Y, and Z is that everyone thinks they should do. And I really, really looked at them and thought about it, and definitely took some things off, and I added a lot more little things like we talked about too, like things that don't have to be like these grand gestures, just things that mean something to me that I want to do.
Yeah, and that's one of my big things in the book is that this is a living document. So many
Mm-hmm.
times in our culture, like when I was in the workforce, if you put something in writing, you put it in an email, even a voicemail or something, people like freak out that like that is like gospel, right? And then you put,
Yeah.
okay, well, but you said this, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but
It's written. It's there.
I said it was, I said it was an idea or a first thought or,
Mm-hmm.
and I think so many times in our, especially our business culture, it's like, if it's written down, it's done. You can't
Yeah.
change it. You can't, some weird mentality out there that, there are no living documents. And so I think that's a huge one. And then I've experienced that as well, of things that I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool. And I put it on my list. And then, then when, like the 88 temples thing, it was like, I had a guest on the show who had mentioned the 88 temples as something she wanted to do, the pilgrimage around Shikoku, the Japanese island of Shikoku.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty decent. You walk around the island and, and the outside of, on the beach, and go to these 88 temples. It's a little bit longer than the Camino de Santiago. It takes
Okay.
about twice as long. But I'm sitting here thinking, it's sea level, man. That's got to be super easy. And, after doing some research, I was like, oh, wait, this is like 400 more meters of elevation gain than the Camino. Yes, it's spread over a little bit longer distance, so it's not quite as bad, but at the same time, it's still hilly.
Yeah.
It's not a
It's still
walk
work.
along the beach. Yeah, it's not a walk along the beach. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm just not, just,
Yeah.
maybe,
There's some things you just don't like.
yeah.
Maybe they're not worth it to you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really awesome. I think I would get something out of it. Maybe I'll do it and I'll just do it in a car and not tell anybody that I'm doing it,
Yeah.
and being able to experience it at some level. And so people don't like, so the purists don't freak out. And quite honestly, Burning Man's kind of become something like that for me,
Mm.
that as I've experienced, well, specifically, I'll just tell the story. It's in the book, but I'll tell the story. For my show, the Crossing It Off podcast, sometimes people come to me as guests. Sometimes, I reach out to people,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I have specific things I want, to have on the show. So I find and try to pinpoint people online through social media and
Okay.
stuff to get them to be a guest on the show. So I wanted to have a burner. I wanted to have somebody that had been to Burning Man on the show. So I made the mistake or not, I went to Reddit and I went to the sub, which I never
Rabbit
really
hole.
do. Yeah. Well, yes. And just the type of people that use, I don't want to stereotype, but the type
Yeah.
of people that use Reddit tend to be fanatical. I think that's okay to say. It's not a horribly bad word,
Yeah. I
but
don't think that's a bad
but
thing.
yeah, but they're definitely in the Burning Man subreddit are, I didn't get totally, flamed, but there's definitely a lot of people who are like, well, if, no real true person that understands the meaning of Burning Man would put it on a bucket list because that's just consumeristic and that's just taking, and, it's just like, whoa, okay, I get you want to be a gatekeeper for your thing, but
Yeah.
like, there's a difference between gatekeeping and like, keeping everybody away.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there are wonderful people that do burns and wonderful people that go to Burning Man and aren't that dogmatic, I think. But it was just like, wow, this really makes me think, do I want to go and spend time with people like this?
Yeah, it could be too much. Because I definitely, I mean, I've met a couple people that have gone, and like some people, well, so first of all, no one I've met has been that into it with that type of mindset. That's like, would say it like that. But they've definitely told me about the people like that are
Mhm.
there. And then I've known some people that went just to try it and were just like a little bit lost and a little
Mhm.
confused, just kind of like not really understanding what was going on and not knowing what to do. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's definitely people that go that are not of that mindset, but
Right.
kind of getting that idea, being like, is this something I need to do?
Well, there was a whole thread inside my thread about how you shouldn't go to Black Rock City as your first burn, that you should do a regional before you go. It's like
Yes, like all
that's
these
not what I.
rules.
Yeah, it's like they're not even rules. They're just like stuff that people make up and
Yeah.
suggest, and it's just like they want rules, and I'm like, isn't that just the opposite of what you're
Oh, it's also
trying
true.
to do?
You're kind of contradicting exactly what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah. Is radical inclusion not one of your tenets? I'm trying to remember. I don't follow them very strongly, but I think radical inclusion is one of your tenets
That is
that you're
so
supposed to
funny.
have. So it's uh, I went on the Camino de Santiago and I met some people that were that dogmatic and that
Yeah.
fanatical about the Camino, right? One guy, I think he said he'd done it like 4 times a year for the last 5, 6 years or something like
Wow.
that. Like he's
That's a lot.
super into it, and he was pretty judgy,
Mm-hmm.
to me and other people. It's like, look at those tourists,
Yeah.
and it's just like, but for the most part, that was really rare,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was definitely an outlier.
Okay. Well, that's
Where,
good.
yeah,
Like things like that. Yeah, I love how, because I've been listening more, how different all the topics have been on each episode. Like things that I obviously never would think of, and just like hearing that perspective and that story. Like two that stick out to me the most.
mm,
There was one um, with a woman who wanted to restore the native grass in Australia. That was
mhm.
really cool. Also because like I don't know, I like personally I'm just really interested in like restoration and nature and things like that. And to have something like that on your bucket list, I'm like, ooh, do I have anything that does any good on my list? Like little reflections like that. And then there was the man who wanted to reconnect with his daughter. I'm like, that was kind of emotional. Like these things are so diverse, and it is really cool to see like where people are putting their energy towards.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I kind of decided early on that I can't judge your list,
Yeah.
and I can't remember if we talked about this last time or
Mhm.
not. But I can't judge someone what somebody else has on their
Mhm.
list. And so in this process of getting guests, like I said, sometimes people just come to me. I had an NFL player reach out to me, and will be in an upcoming
Oh,
episode of
cool.
playing in the NFL. And he's got some stuff to self promote, but he's like, no, I get it. I had this on my list of things to do, and I get to talk about that, right? And then that's totally cool. But there are some things, like I have a professional mermaid that I follow
Oh,
on
that's cool. I've
Instagram,
seen that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I constantly am like, Ella, when are we gonna do this? When are we gonna do this?
Mhm.
I have a cosplayer coming up that cosplays, on at conventions,
Mhm.
but she like goes above and beyond. Like she has a whole character, this whole Star Wars character that she
Oh,
does,
I love Star Wars.
where well she, oh my gosh, you have to see her. It's Dolores is her character, and Dolores is HR on the Death Star.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and so she goes around and gives out citations to other
That's
cosplayers
so
at conventions.
funny.
Oh my gosh, so hysterical. It makes me laugh every time I see her stuff. But she definitely is like taking it to that next
Mhm.
level. And so, and specifically the story about her is that in our email exchanges, right? She's like, I don't know if this is, if I'm a good fit for you or
Mhm.
whatever. And I'm like, are you passionate about what you do?
Yeah.
Did you cross off a list, and are you passionate about it? Because that's all that matters. Because really what I'm finding is, and I'm glad about it, is that a lot of people listen to the show not necessarily for that specific item,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you are yet to have children, so
Yeah.
listening to someone talk about having a strange child is probably not the I wouldn't say most beneficial use of your time, but
It's not something I
it's not
can relate to. Yeah.
yeah, directly. But the process that he went through in having that relationship, maybe it's not a child for you, but maybe it's somebody else,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's somebody you were a massive jerk to. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But the process, I think, is what is really important
Yeah.
for people to hear out of each episode. And so I'm excited that people are getting that it's not just, oh, I'm not going to listen to that episode because it doesn't apply to me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, being, not having an arm and not having a leg and walking the runway during Fashion Week isn't going to hit a lot of
Yeah.
people, right? But listening to Jess talk about her experience and what she went through to get that done, and how that was a dream of hers, and why it was, and what she had to overcome to make that happen, is really what I want folks to get out of the show. It's kind of that, what I would call, when I was a teacher, my hidden curriculum, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing you don't see, right? But you hope your students get.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm hearing more people when they talk about the show mention that, like you did.
Yeah, definitely. Because, yeah, I think that is exactly what it is. It's like, it's not specific details of what the person is doing, but more so like how they came to want to do it, or like the mindset they had accomplishing it. More so like those things are what people come for. And that's funny because I feel like we kind of have the same response, because I've definitely had people be like, I don't think I'm that interesting. I don't know if you want me to be on your show. And I'm like, it's just a conversation. Do you love what you do? Let's talk about it. And like, that's really it. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. And I think, yeah, that's another thing your show is showing, is like, it doesn't have to be over the top. It can be whatever it is you wanted to do and you did it.
Yeah, as long as, like I said, I tell folks, as long as you're passionate about it, and it was on a list of something you wanted to do, bring it on. I think that we can have a good enough conversation
Yeah,
to
definitely.
share your story in such a way that people will be into it.
Mm-hmm. And something that you hadn't crossed off yet last time we talked, but you have now, you got your knuckle tattoos done.
I
That
did.
was your number one thing last time we spoke.
Yeah, I think it was just timing wise number
Mm-hmm.
one, but it was something I knew I wanted to do. I knew it was
Yeah.
next, and I did, and I actually did it twice.
Oh, really?
So yes, so it's do no
Mm-hmm.
harm.
I
So
like it. That's
that's
cool.
I say that's 80% namaste, and then this is
Oh, that's the
20%.
other part.
So for those that aren't watching, on my middle fingers, I have, on one middle finger I have "you are," and then on the other middle finger I have number one. So
That is
um,
amazing. I love
80
it.
percent namaste, 20% f off. So it's you can't have Ted Lasso without Roy Kent. So it's just like hopefully people get that reference,
That is so
but
funny.
it's
So, did the idea for the other ones come later?
yes, I got the do no harm before I went on my 3 month journey around the
Mm-hmm.
planet, and or halfway around the planet, and and then while on my trip, I was in Chiste, Italy, and my father had just passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and I was having some arguments with somebody, and it was really made me mad. And I had always wanted to put something on my middle fingers. The funny thing is, I never put two and two together. But as a teacher, I don't know if I'm proud of this or not. I had a really close relationship with my
Mm-hmm.
students, and I am proud of that. Every once in a while, I would sneak in a middle finger to them. They're high school
Yeah.
students, and every once in a while, I'd sneak in a middle finger, and then they inevitably rat me. And Mr. Williams just gave me the middle finger, and I was going, no, I didn't. I just told you you were number one. I just, it wasn't like every week that would happen, but every once again that happened. And then I was mad, and I was like, I'm gonna put something on my middle fingers, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're number one. Why is that?
That is
That's
so
a
good.
no brainer. That's a no brainer. I mean, because I spent years with knowing that I was going to do no harm on my
Yeah.
knuckles,
You definitely mentioned that like
and just
specifically too.
yeah, that I was waiting around, and it was a big deal. And then just like it was like within 24 hours, it was like like I thought about one evening sitting next to Canal eating pizza and having gelato. I thought, oh, that's what I'll put on there. And the next day found a tattoo parlor and walked in, and I said, "You got any time?" He goes, "What do you want?" And I told him. He said, "Oh yeah, we're doing
I
that."
love that.
he thought that was the best idea in the world. So it's like, all right, let's go. So that was the shortest time between conception and ink, I think, that I'd ever had. So it was a little scary. My partner was like, I don't, are you sure? I'm like, oh, it's already done. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Time zone differences between Italy and
Oh, by the
Seattle.
time
She
she read
knows.
it, it was
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
That's so funny.
She said, I
Oh my
think I
god.
think it's done. So it worked out then.
That's kind of a funny coincidence because I was getting, I mean, obviously I didn't get it for the same reason, but I was going to get like little tattoos on my thumbs. And
Mhm.
for some reason, last minute, I was like, oh, wouldn't that be funny if I put them here? And I put them here instead. So, I
Nah.
mean, it's just like little
Yep.
decorations, but I was like, that looks cool there.
There you go. It's a happy
Yeah.
fu.
And it was the same for me. It was just like a quick turnaround. I was like, I think I like that better.
Yep.
uh, has there been anything else that you've been able to cross off since then?
Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of stuff. I crossed off crashing a wedding.
Oh, yeah. I remember I saw
Remember if we
that.
talked about that? I went. Some friends I met on the Camino were engaged on the Camino. They were already engaged and doing the Camino together. And one day we were all having lunch, I think, and laughing about crashing their wedding. That was this destination wedding in
Hmm.
Costa Rica, just like 50 family members and some friends. And so, like, oh, we're gonna crash that. And they're like, oh my gosh, that'd be so funny. And then that whole group of people moved on in the walk ahead of me as I slowed down to meet my partner and take a rest day and that kind of stuff. And so when they all got to Santiago, they celebrated that night. The bride got a little tipsy and invited everyone to come to the wedding, but I wasn't there to get an invitation. So a month later, I I was talking to people and like, hey, we're gonna crash this wedding, and they're like, yeah, we all got invited. I was like,
So I
oh,
don't
okay,
have
it's
to.
yeah, it's on now. I mean, it's this is happening. I'm going to crash this wedding, and so that was a whole lot of fun. I had to lie to them, tell them I was going to be in Europe, so they didn't think to
Mm,
invite me, because if they invited me, I would have had to
yeah.
say yes. So, and then they got married at like some really exclusive hotel. The reception was down this massive hill. Like you have to take a bus down the hill to
Hmm.
get there to where the reception was. You can't even take like a golf cart or
Yeah.
something, because it's so steep. The golf cart
Oh,
won't come
wow.
up the hill. And so we had to like I had to make friends with the guys, the valets and stuff at the hotel, like all week before we went.
Wow. That's a lot of
Before
effort.
we went over. Yeah. Oh, it was you should listen to the episode. I interviewed them about having a destination wedding, and then they turned the tables and interviewed me about crashing a wedding. So the following episode, but it was their wedding. But yeah, I made friends with the valets throughout the week, and then um we pulled up that night. And it's like, hey, can we get down there? And they're like, well, let me check. And he's like, well, if you let me drive your car and bring it back up, well, I'll take you down
Mm,
there. And they did it. It's just like they were like, yeah, we'll
that's
do
so
that.
cool.
So yeah, it was pretty funny. And then we got down there, and one of the attendants for the wedding for the reception came up to me and she's like, "Oh, I know you arrived late. Do you want to get us a plate?" And the groom like ran up, waving his hands, like, "No, it's okay. They're with us." I'm like, "Bro, I got this. Don't worry about it. We're good. Not a problem." So yeah, that was a ton of fun doing that, and I've been trying to teach myself how to play the ukulele, and a lot of my time spending writing a book. So I've got the Live Out Your List book that I'm trying to complete, and then I also have another book. My dad passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Something thanks. I'm super lucky. We buried our shit, so to speak,
Oh,
about
that's good.
20 years
That's
ago.
really good.
Yeah. So the night we buried his mom,
Mm.
actually, we were sitting together at his house. I was in from out of town, and I just looked at him and said, I just want to let you know that I'm pretty proud of you for becoming her best friend over the last 5 years when she didn't deserve it, because she did not. She was a nasty person. My grandpa was a nasty person, and my dad really, did not have a
Mm.
good childhood emotionally, and so uh, that just kind of opened the flood doors for us to be able to just kind of, you hurt me, this is how you hurt me, and the other person saying sorry, this is
Yeah.
where I was at, and just going back and forth for about 4 hours just kind of cleared the path. And we had a really good relationship for the
Oh,
last
that's
20
great.
years, but my dad passed, so that's kind of put some things on hold. I had to actually fly in from Italy to come to his funeral. But it's all been good, but I am specifically writing another book about him and his kind of the it's about his relationship with his
Okay.
father, my relationship with my dad, and then my relationship with my son, and all through kind of the lens of professional wrestling, because
Hmm.
some form or fashion we've all been fans
Okay.
over the years, and there's been some bonding at some level with all of us through that, and so I talk about that, and um, so it actually goes through the history of professional wrestling as it goes through the history of the male bonding in my
Oh, that's
family.
interesting. So this is a
Yeah.
nonfiction book. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I've been working on that, and that was real. I've had that book in my head for a little while, so that's been on my bucket list to get that out. The other Live Out Your List book, the bucket list lifestyle guide is something that's kind of just like, oh, I gotta get this out of the way so I can work on
Yeah.
this other thing, provide some income maybe, and just it just permeates, the bucket list lifestyle kind of permeates everything I do. So just trying to move some space out of my
Hmm.
brain, and it's been good to kind of put the other book on hold a little bit, and so I can remember stuff as I get, a little bit further distance from my father's
Yeah.
passing. I get to remember other things, and have been able to add stuff, and even with my relationship with my son, which is ongoing forever, even stuff there kind of keeps adding on. So it's been good to kind of slow roll that, but I want to get to that as well.
Yeah. And even with like, because that scene, even though it is nonfiction, seems a little bit more creative, whereas the bucket list one is more so of kind of a how to almost, or like,
Right,
informational.
exactly.
Yeah. And I always feel
Yeah.
like taking breaks from creative things can really help, because sometimes when you're too in it, you just don't see these things until you take a break.
Yeah, and two totally, like you say, can completely different ways of writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wrote an outline for the bucket list book, in about 2 days. And it was real simple, and now I'm just writing the outline.
Yeah.
Whereas with the memoir, there's, I have a whole mind map of,
Mm-hmm.
all these crazy lines and different directions things go,
Yeah.
and
And like how to make
where
them
do you,
connect and like,
yeah, yeah. How do you tell this story by weaving a bunch of other stories together is a very different process than here are the 8 things,
yeah.
that are benefits from having a bucket list, and take one of those 8 things and make it your intention. And I mean, that's, and not that it's simple, but it's not, because the bucket list book definitely has a lot of storytelling in it,
Mm-hmm.
that I use as examples, whether that's folks from my show like you. You'll be getting a section of the book that has you in it.
Oh wow, that's
So,
wow. That's exciting.
couple paragraphs that I need your approval so that I can use your name. But it's yeah, so there's definitely story in it. The whole first section is my story of becoming the head crosser of my bucket list. So I don't think it's boring. I think it's fun to read it.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, but it's just like you say, it's easier to tell a story. You gotta be way more creative and mindful as I put the memoir
Yeah.
together, saying, okay, this story fits, this story doesn't fit, or do I want to even tell this story? Does this story matter? Is this something I want to keep to myself that I don't want to
Mm.
share with the world?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Is also something else.
Something I don't know, totally off topic, but yeah, that's something I feel like has come up in my mind sometimes of like, what's just special that I don't want to share with other people that I want to keep for myself.
Have you ever had a song that you've written or that you say, no, I'm not gonna, that's mine?
Oh, I feel like I've done that a lot actually. Like before I got into songwriting, I wrote a lot of poems, and part of
Mm,
me wanted to, I mean, back in the day when like blogs and things like that were bigger, I was like, oh, I should start a blog and post things. And then I just got so, I don't know if it was more wanting to keep things to myself or just being self-conscious. But I was like, I don't know if I want people to
mm,
read these intimate thoughts that I'm having. So I can imagine
mm.
that might be hard too to share those stories.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best stuff, though, right? I
That's
mean,
true.
I mean, it's when you're able to be vulnerable and intimate. That's where the greatness probably shines the brightest.
That
So,
is a really good point.
how much are you keeping your light under a basket and not letting it shine? Not to be all Jesus-y or anything, but it's I mean, don't hide your light under a bushel for sure.
No, that's definitely a good point. And I know there's been times like on this show specifically too where I mean, well, like maybe almost all the episodes where conversations will just be
Mm,
going and, both of us will say things that maybe we didn't intend to say or maybe we thought we wouldn't, but it, I don't know, it just came out and it felt good to come out and it maybe spoke to somebody else in some kind of way.
mhm.
So that is true.
Yeah. And I encourage everybody, even you. I mean, we live in such an amazing time. I mean, with what we both do on our podcasts, and you use video and share that. Literature is the same way.
Yeah,
I mean, I've just been floored how easy it is to get a book published. I don't think it's easy to write a book, but it's definitely very easily to get one
I
published.
did not know
And
that.
you can basically publish anything you want on Amazon. I mean, and
Good to
and
know.
and you can have it just digitally, or you can have it so that they'll print on demand. And the interesting thing is, I've talked to a lot of literary coaches. It sometimes doesn't feel good when people go, "Oh, you got this. You're doing the right thing. You don't need me." And I'm like, "Wait, I feel like I
Yeah.
need you.
I need
That's why I
some
contacted you in the
guidance.
first place." And they're like, "No, no, you're doing fine. You got it all bases covered." And I'm like, it doesn't feel like I do. So, but I mean, most of the time people tell me it's like you could get an agent. You can spend time getting an agent. You can spend time them selling a manuscript, and but when it all boils down to it, I mean, the publishers are looking. They're looking to do it on the cheap,
Yeah,
and they don't do a whole lot of work anymore. They don't,
that's
they expect you
true.
to bring followers to the table, and they expect you to go out and use your social media to promote the book, and they expect that you're going to go do podcasts. And it's like, I'm already doing all that stuff. Why wait around for a publisher when I can just
Yeah,
put it out there? And
it's a
so
good point.
we live in what should be, I think, a creative heyday
Mm-hmm.
for our culture, because you can just about publish in any form or fashion you want and get your stuff out there and not have to. There aren't a lot of gatekeepers when it comes to
Yeah.
getting content out there anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you've got a book of poetry, man, slap it together in a PDF and
Oof.
throw it out there. I'm telling you,
That's
it's
so funny
you
that you
know
say that because it's also been on my bucket list for a long time to publish a book, but I never once had the thought of putting my poems that I already have in a book, because I've been working on writing one, but it's like it's a very complicated story and it's obviously taking a while. So I had no I have no rush to put it out. I
Hmm.
eventually still want to, but that idea I never thought about.
Yeah, and that's that was part of it for me too, right? With that I didn't want my first book to be the memoir, because the
Mm.
memoir is so because I used to say, I just don't want to get it out of my head, right? That when it was first on my bucket list, I'm like, I just want to get this book out of my head. And then as I've shared the idea with people, people are like, oh, I want to read that book. That sounds really
Mm.
good. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shoot. Now I have to actually, actually have
Now
to,
I got to do it.
gosh darn it, now I gotta do it. It's that whole accountability thing. Not only do I have to do it, but now I want to do it well. And so, writing this kind of self-help kind of book, or way of helping people with their bucket list, I don't want to say it's just different than it's that when I write my memoir and I put it out, that's not going to be the first thing I've ever written.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have practice at least once,
That makes sense.
even though
It's
the kind of,
fulfilling in a different way.
yeah, it's a different genre, it's a different it's a different way to write, but it's very much not my first foray. It's not my first toe in the pond, so to speak. I guess the easiest way to put it. And so I like that. I like that I had to, that my learning curve won't be so massive
Hmm.
when I put out the memoir. As far as like I'm designing my own cover for the Live Out Your List.
Ooh.
I have to like format it, correctly in the PDF so that it comes out, so that one, it can be an electronic document, and then two, so that it can be printed out, so it's got all
Hmm.
the pages in the right places, and all this stuff that
Yeah.
you have to. It's amazing. You go on to Amazon, to their self-published pages, and you tell it the size that you want it and how many pages are in it, and or how many words or how many pages, and it spits out a template for you. Like, it creates a template for you, so
Wow.
that, yes, so with all the margins and everything set up so that you can just put the lettering and everything. You can go to Canva, you can take this template, go to Canva, and create your own cover for your book, and then they print it out, and it's just like,
That is
okay.
so cool.
Oh my gosh, it is. I mean, this really is. It's available. It takes some effort to learn
Yeah.
things, just like it probably was for you. I don't think you had a lot of podcasting experience, or
Yeah.
broadcasting experience before you started doing this. It's about the same, right? As far as going out and having a learning curve and learning how to do things,
Yeah.
and technology and that. It's about the same. It's not much harder than doing something like this.
Yeah. It takes some time, but the thing is, everything is available to us, especially
Hmm.
so much more so today than it ever has been.
Oh, most definitely.
Interesting. I'm going to look into this.
I won't charge you for coaching for that.
Man, I'm so I thought it was so exciting too when I saw that you were doing coaching, because I feel like there's so many benefits to just speaking about something like that.
Mm,
Cuz like I was saying with like the show too, is how sometimes things don't come out, or things that come out were not expected to or didn't mean to. When you're talking things through, especially when something's just an idea, it really like starts to get your mind working and more things flowing. And sometimes there might be things that you want to accomplish in your life that you never knew until you maybe talk to someone about it, maybe get it out, write it, do something about it.
yeah, and that's the big thing about mentoring or coaching. It's I wanted to do that in such a way that it was affordable and easy.
Mm,
I think that so many times when you think about a coach or you think about a mentor, having those kind of people in your life, the big tickets come up,
yeah,
and
definitely.
that's what you see a lot of, um, in the industry today. You see people charging big numbers,
Yeah.
for probably what I would assume are little results.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather I would rather work with somebody for 2 or 3 sessions and then them say, I got it, I'm out of here. If I need your help, I'll come back.
Yeah.
Then to say, hey, I'm going to charge you $100 per visit. And you need to have 10, 10 sessions. It's like, for me, it's like, what do you need? And
Hmm.
once you get what you need, you're out of here,
Yeah, I love
because
that.
I want to help the most amount of people as possible. I almost went through a process of getting certified as a bucket list coach. There's someone that does that, certifies bucket list life coaches,
Wow, that's so
and
niche.
yes, and so I looked at all their stuff, and I was just like, I don't want to sell to corporate bigwigs.
Yeah.
I just want anybody that wants help to be able to call me up and
Yeah.
and send me an email and say, hey, let's do this. So right now I'm offering free 20 minutes. so if somebody wants to just see what that would even look like, you can do that for 20. Let's get together for 20 minutes. We'll talk through some stuff and see if this is something for you. Because I just want to be open and available to people because I really want to help people. I don't want to make, I'm not looking to make Tony Robbins money.
I was
You know,
just about to say, you're not trying to be Tony Robbins. You like
you
read
know,
my
I,
mind.
I love Tony Robbins. I'm not shitting on Tony Robbins in any form or fashion. I mean, I like him more now that he swears more.
He
Back in
definitely
the
swears a
80s,
lot. It's interesting.
yeah, but back in the 80s and 90s, Tony was not a swearer. That was definitely off limits. But society's changed, and he's changed. He's probably, he can afford to. If you don't like the fact that
True.
Tony swears, f off. I mean, he can find 10 other people to fill your shoes,
Exactly. Yeah. You've got
so
enough
he doesn't
people
have to.
following that.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry
Losing
about
your
that.
business isn't really going to hurt.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure that was maybe been a step
Hmm.
too far for him at one point.
Yeah. When you're trying to build yourself up, it can
Yeah.
be different.
Well,
Yeah.
I think if you're going to build yourself up, that you're building yourself up, and so I don't don't do anything that's not you. And
True.
that was the case with the certification. It was like, oh, well, we do these, vision boarding dream sessions with corporations, and they
Like
pay us.
corporate retreat kind of things.
Yes. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm sure that's great for somebody.
Yeah.
It's not for me. It's not what I
Hmm.
want to do. I don't want to do that. So I just decided that I can do it on my own. I've been a teacher and a mentor for 35, 40, almost 40 years now,
Yeah.
to young people and to adults. So wow, I can do this. And I do it pretty well. And, you know, I've got it down now, the system down, and know how to walk people through the process and say, okay, where are you at? Do you still not have a mindset? Do you still not set an intention? Have you made a list?
Yeah.
Let's make you a list. Are you struggling on where to start? Because you already have a list, you don't know where you need to go. Let's look at the list and see what your priorities are and start crossing stuff off.
I think that's another sign of the times too, is probably before, I mean, not probably, it definitely was before with anyone in public eye or trying to do anything like that. Your perception and your image was so scrutinized all the time.
Mm.
And now we're in a time where people want to see who you are. And
Hmm.
it's better to see the real you. So
Oh yeah.
it's definitely great that you were able to do that in a way that's true to you and not need to go those routes that don't speak to you in any kind of way.
Yeah, yeah, and even in writing the book, I mean, it's my editors, who's just my partner. Don't really have an editor, but I have
That's
my
cool though.
partner's editing. She's like, "Do you want to say that?" And just a little side thing, since like it's me. I want people to see me. I want my voice in this book. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't. This isn't supposed to be a study guide or
Hmm.
a textbook. This
Yeah.
is me.
It should still feel
And
like you.
yep, yep. And
Love that.
so yeah, I'm gonna make some wisecracks, and I'm gonna make some jokes. Hopefully people get them. If not, it's all right. But it's I'm gonna put myself out there, as long as it's not detrimental. Ultimately detrimental. And I don't think anything that have in there is. But she was like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yep." She goes, "All right, okay, well, let's go." So yeah, even in writing the book, I had to take that opportunity to say, I still have to show me.
Yeah. I love
Still to
that.
be true to myself.
That's cool. Man, I can't wait to read that because I definitely will.
Awesome.
So, between now and then, from back in November,
Mm.
with as much that's changed and where you kind of were in your life at that point, if you could talk to yourself, you now, to yourself back
Mm.
then, do you think what is something you would want to tell yourself?
Oh, wow. Budget your money better.
Always good advice.
Yeah, I mean that's I'm to that point where I'm I'm getting there that I have to make some decisions about what's next because I haven't been really working. I mean, I've been somewhat building a brand and building a business over the last year, and my hope is that that starts producing some income so that I don't have to like go back and teach or do something. It should be fine. They need teachers right now, so it's not like I wouldn't be able to get a substitute job or something if
Yeah.
I just wanted to work part time. So, but it's not about making the money last as much as maybe I could have done more,
Mm,
if that makes any sense. It's not that I want this budget money so that I could um keep not having a job, but it was like, I was just the other day I was thinking about, man, I always said I wanted to go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I wish I could have tacked that on,
yeah.
right?
While you were still out and
Yeah, while I was
around.
still outgoing, I wish I could have tacked that on, and I probably could have if I had, just like gotten smaller Airbnbs or,
Mm.
what there are some things I could have done where I probably could have gotten that done. But it's like with everything. I don't have regrets.
Yeah.
I don't, man, it sucks. I should have done that. It's just like, man, I could have. That's a good lesson to learn moving forward. But I think that's it. I spent $1,000 on a handcrafted Italian suit for my dad's funeral.
You know what?
Um,
I personally think that was not a bad investment.
no, it's a beautiful investment. It's a wonderful suit. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, but it was interesting even that process where I was like I tried to go to a small place that I thought was out of the way that may not charge as
Mm,
much, and it was a young guy in his late 20s. He was not just starting out, but definitely an artist. I mean, he was an
yeah.
artist. He had paintings of his own in the shop. But I walked in there and I'm like, I need a suit. He goes, when you need it by? And I'm like, 4 days. And he was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Mm,
He said, let me look at the rack. And he pulled this suit off the rack. He said, I think this might work. And he put it on, and it was pretty darn close. He said, I can make the adjustments in 4 days. I'll find you I'm not going to be able to get you a custom made shirt, but here's this guy down the road that you should go to and tell them I sent you, and they'll hook you up, um, and I'll get you a pocket square, and it'll be all good. And I'm sitting there, my American brain's like, oh my God, this is going to be so expensive. It's
yeah.
a fine Italian handmade suit. It's going to be crazy. And then I put it on, and I was just looking at it. It's like, I don't care.
Yep.
I absolutely don't care. I look good. I feel good. It's my dad's funeral. It's my dad deserved it. I deserve it. It's not
Yep. Some of those
not a
things are
thing.
worth the splurge.
Yeah. And so my partner asked me. She was like, "So how bad was it?" And I said, "Well, it was worse than Men's Warehouse, but a whole lot less worse than an Armani. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. But I looked at it and I looked myself in the mirror and I'm like, my dad deserves this. I deserve this. Whatever it is, I'm doing it. And it turned out not to be so bad.
Yeah.
So there's things like that. It's like, that came out of that, out of my travel
Out of the,
money that
yeah.
I was just like, do I wish I had it back? No, not really. So it's what it is. But maybe budgeting a little bit better beforehand so that I could have stretched it out a little bit. Maybe is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Definitely not a bad thing. I mean, it is a good lesson learned overall.
Yeah.
You still took out a lot of what you did and where you got
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 18 flights in 3 months. I mean, it
Ooh.
was, yeah, yeah. Well, including the ones to get back for the funeral, but it was worth it. It was definitely worth it.